Disbelieved and dismissed, she revealed an incredible dish that shocked everyone into silence. Emily stood in the cramped kitchen of the diner, grease splattering as she flipped burgers, her spirit feeling just as fried. She had long been dismissed, bills piled on the counter, a teenage daughter with a ferocious appetite for better things, and her own dreams of becoming a chef slowly simmering away in doubt. The worn walls echoed laughter and chatter that contrasted sharply with the weight of her disappointment. Amid the clatter of dishes and the hum of routine, Emily felt invisible, her aspirations stifled under the weight of weekly tips barely enough to make a dent in either budget or ambition. Underneath the surface of her wearied existence was a flicker of passion, a love for cooking rooted deep in her memories of her grandmother, who once nurtured talent in a kitchen that smelled of cinnamon and nostalgia. But now, standing as a part-time waitress in a town that thrived on tradition and scorned the unconventional, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that every ambitious thought was another mark against her, another dismissal at the hands of gossip-fueled judgment. The town was anchored by culinary elders who prized polished recipes over daring creations. She felt lost among seasoned cooks wielding their knives like rulers, her aspirations a distant echo. As she wiped the counter with a ragged cloth, her mind drifted to the attic. Dust motes danced in the shafts of faint light filtering through a window, and there lay a dormant history, her late grandmother's old recipe book. Could she dare to dream again? Heart racing and palm sweating, she longed for that forgotten connection, the thrill of simmering sauces and blending spices. Her grandmother had believed in her ability to create, to flourish, where most deemed her too late to pursue her culinary passions. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Determined, Emily signed up for the town cook-off, a decision that sent waves of anxiety crashing over her. Every week, the laughter of diners mocked her. What does Emily know about cooking? She can't even manage a shift without dropping plates. Each word gnawed at her resolve, yet she felt an urgency swell within. How could she ever face Lily if she surrendered to their jeers? This was about more than just a title. It was about family legacy, passion reclaiming its rightful throne, and the fight to claim her voice amidst the cacophony of doubt.
As she blended her grandmother's cherished recipes with her unique flair, cutting and sautéing, Emily sensed the mounting pressure manifesting into a storm of emotions. Each slice of garlic became a confrontation with fear of failure, of inadequacies, of inheriting a world that dismissed her still. And now, standing at the doorway of the cook-off, with trembling hands and a racing heart, she knew she had to confront what lay ahead. The daunting crowd loomed, each face invoking a mixture of skepticism and disdain. Could she really pull off a victory when all her life she had been told she was a novice? Heartache threatened to envelop her as the judges started to circle, their unforgiving gazes fixed upon her like wolves eyeing prey. In that moment, doubt reigned, taunting her to step back, but there was a roaring flame inside, demanding she rise up. In this split second, would she submit to fear or unleash the chef she was meant to be? The moment hung precariously, her resolve teetered on the brink as the air thickened with uncertainty. A ravenous silence followed her movements, yet her voice remained locked within, a whisper battling a storm. The shocking turn of fate rested in the balance, and Emily's strength would be tested. Would she dare reveal her dish, or vanish like so many of her dreams? Emily's heart pounded in her chest, a wild percussion underscoring her desperation. As she stood holding her creation, a beautifully plated dish that amalgamated her grandmother's recipes with her intuition, doubt slithered into her mind, suffocating her resolve. The judges, with their narrowed eyes and folded arms, formed an unyielding wall of skepticism. Each second stretched interminably, the cacophony of the diner fading until the only sound she could hear was the roar within her own head. This was the moment that could shatter her silence or solidify her defiance. She recalled the face of her daughter, Lily, vibrant and full of dreams not yet extinguished. Emily couldn't let her down, not now. With a deep breath, she placed her dish on the table, the aromatic blend of flavors wafting into the air, begging for recognition. What if they laughed? What if it all fell apart? The past echoed in her ears, each derisive whisper threading around her heart, tightening like a noose. But something deeper ignited within her, the warmth of her grandmother's belief, rooted in every spoonful she had savored as a child. Emily needed to embrace that legacy, channel it into her own unique identity. As the first judge took a bite, she leaned in, focusing on the woman's expression. The initial skepticism gave way to surprise, her brow raising fractionally. Emily's heart raced with cautious hope. She watched as the judge closed her eyes, savoring the taste, allowing Emily a moment of reprieve from her swirling doubts. But as other judges approached, Emily's mind began to flip between fragments of her life.
She saw the cramped kitchen where she had learned the essence of cooking, the echoes of her grandmother's laughter as they experimented together. That depth of knowledge, that connection, could they see it? Was it enough for her to be more than just the woman who served burgers at the diner? She forced herself to breathe through her rising anxiety, the urge to second-guess herself amplifying within her. Who does she think she is? A voice cut through her thoughts, followed by a ripple of muttered judgments from the crowd. These were the familiar faces who had rooted for her demise, who had always kept her at arm's length as an aspiring cook. Frustration clenched at her chest. She wasn't merely a waitress. She was an artist, a creator. She was not bound by the limitations they imposed on her. As she focused on the plate, her hands began to tremble, not from fear, but from the simmering embers of newfound empowerment. The first judge nodded at her, and then she heard a tantalizing response, words bubbling forth that sounded like acceptance, possibly admiration. Yet she couldn't allow herself to dwell there. There was still the critical moment of judgment ahead. This would either be the beginning of her culinary career or the final sentence in the narrative of her dreams. Just as realization began to settle over her like a soft embrace, her focus narrowed once again, the room shrinking around her, hazy whispers fading into the background. The next judge approached, and she steadied herself, determined to be assertive. "This dish," she boldly declared, "is a tribute to my grandmother's spirit, combined with my own journey. It represents resilience, flavor, and all I have learned along the way." In that moment, she revealed more than just a dish. She revealed a part of herself that had too often been hidden under layers of doubt. This was her anthem, her declaration. The remaining judges paused, confusion dancing on their faces, but Emily stood firm, bright in her vulnerability. Before they could speak, she felt a surge of adrenaline course through her. Would they accept her? Would they finally acknowledge the depth of her culinary spirit? As the tension mounted and eyes scrutinized her every gesture, Emily awaited a judgment that would either anchor her to doubt or free her into possibility. What awaited her beyond this moment? With her heart thrumming, she braced for the revelation. The first judge finally spoke, breaking the heavy silence that enveloped the room. "This is quite remarkable," she said slowly, her voice steady yet filled with intrigue. "It speaks of tradition, but also of something fresh. Tell us more about your inspiration." Emily's breath caught momentarily. The questions felt like a lifeline thrown in stormy waters. She had always shied away from the spotlight, uncertain of her own worth. But today, something shifted deep within her. "My grandmother taught me that cooking is about connection," she began, slowly pulling threads from the tapestry of her memories. "Every recipe carries a story, a piece of love shared over a family meal. I wanted to create something that was not just about taste, but about heritage and hope." As those words spilled from her lips, she felt the weight of years of doubt begin to lift. She was no longer just a waitress. She was an artist, weaving her grandmother's narrative into her own. With each explanation, she could feel her confidence blossoming like a flower in spring, opening to the warmth of appreciation. The judges leaned forward, clearly engaged, their skepticism transforming into curiosity. She continued to elaborate on the flavors, the techniques she had learned from countless afternoons spent in her grandmother's kitchen. The act of sharing became a bridge, pulling her further from the shadows of self-doubt and showing others why she deserved to stand in this arena. But as she wrapped up her presentation, the voice of dissent from the crowd loomed large. A familiar face, Rebecca, a former colleague, scoffed. "You think you can just serve nostalgia and call it innovation? You haven't earned a place here." Her words hung in the air, cold and biting, a stark contrast to the warmth Emily had just created. Emily felt a rush of heat surge through her body, and with it came a nameless resolve. The hurtful words threatened to unravel every thread she had just woven into her declaration. But in that moment, she chose to confront the anger rather than retreat. "Innovation doesn't mean abandoning my roots," she replied, meeting Rebecca's gaze. "It means expanding upon them,
breathing new life into the old. The room shifted as the judges absorbed her words, the tension now crackling with a different kind of energy. Emily stood firmly, no longer on uncertain ground. She recognized the power of her voice, the clarity with which she articulated her journey. She was not merely defending herself, she was affirming her identity. "Who I am is not only a waitress," she continued, her conviction slicing through the atmosphere. "I am a creator who brings history onto the plate. Each dish is a chapter, merging what was with what can be." Even as she spoke, a flicker of fear coiled in her stomach, yet she fed off the potency of her argument, allowing it to transform her trepidation into empowerment. As the judges leaned in, clearly intrigued, Emily's heart soared. Could this confrontation be the turning point? Could this be the moment her passion ignited a fire in others? The judges whispered amongst themselves. Their expressions shifted from skepticism to something that felt almost akin to respect. Emily's bravado, once a mere flicker of hope, now blazed within her. Perhaps she wasn't just fighting for herself, but for anyone who had dared to dream amongst the disbelievers.
Just as she was about to breathe a sigh of relief, preparing for the next round of evaluations, one judge rose, eyes gleaming with determination. "Let's change the narrative," she proposed, her voice resolute. "What if we set up a pop-up event featuring your dish? This is a chance not just for recognition, but for true connection with the community you're eager to embrace." Emily's heart raced as possibilities unfurled before her. The chance to share her story, her grandmother's story, in a bold, new way. But she also felt the weight of what that would mean, what it would demand from her. Was she truly ready for the spotlight? The moment hung in the air, heavy with expectation. To seize this opportunity could catapult her life into an unforeseen direction, one filled with risk, exposure, and possibility. As she wrestled with the enormity of the decision, the judges turned to her, waiting, their expressions eager yet patient, poised to witness her next move. Could she step into the light, confronting not just the world, but herself? The question loomed large, its answer hanging just within reach. The gravity of the moment pressed down on Emily like a weight. The judges, previously distant figures, now felt like an audience orchestrating her next steps, an unwelcome pressure that twisted her insides. Her mind raced, doubts wrestled fiercely with the exhilaration growing inside her. This was not only an opportunity, but also a fierce test of her resolve. Could she endure the scrutiny that awaited? As the room silently held its breath, Emily's hand instinctively brushed against the fabric of her apron, a grounding gesture that connected her to her roots. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice whispering encouragement, urging her to shine. This wasn't merely about creating a dish. It was about sharing a profound legacy that had been passed down through generations. Hurdles had always seemed insurmountable, but now the fear of failure faded, replaced by a determination to rise above constraints. She did not only want the judge's approval, she hungered for recognition of her story. "Yes," she said, her voice steady yet infused with innate warmth. "I would love to showcase my dish, but it needs to be more than just a tasting. It should resonate with backgrounds, flavors, and emotions." The weight of her words hung palpable in the air. She could almost feel the spark of inspiration igniting in the hearts of those present, mirrored back in their approving nods. The judge who had initially proposed the idea leaned forward, intrigued. "What are you envisioning?" Emily took a deep breath, her mind blossoming with possibilities. "Each dish will be part of a story, and I want to weave my grandmother's recipes into tastings complemented by personal anecdotes. I want people to experience not just food, but history and connection." Almost instinctively, her thoughts raced ahead. The logistics of preparing ingredients, the venue, and the people she would need by her side. The details tumbled forward like a cascade, each one steeped in her desire for authenticity. However, the doubt still clawed at the edges of her mind. What if the execution fell flat? What if the crowds turned away in indifference? Yet, as she envisioned the space filled with anticipation, she also felt a surge of defiance. This could transform her narrative from that of a waitress to a visionary. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this happen," she concluded, firm in her resolve. "But I need a team, people who share the same belief in the power of food and storytelling." The words felt like a catalyst, setting the wheels of her aspirations into motion. The judges nodded appreciatively, and she could see the initial skepticism morphing into genuine admiration. Energized by her own conviction, Emily outlined a plan, inviting fellow culinary artists to join her.
As she spoke, a sense of seismic change rippled through the room. The shift was undeniable. Little did she know how challenging this venture would be. Moments later, as conversations ignited around her, Emily caught a glimpse of Rebecca, her face painted with disbelief and envy lurking behind her eyes. The turmoil of emotions stirred. Was this woman silently plotting to undermine her efforts, or was she merely a reflection of Emily's past insecurities, resurfacing at the worst moment? With the foundation of her vision laid, Emily needed to confront not only the external challenges that lay ahead, but the internal doubt that still threatened to destabilize her. Each step forward would demand resilience and grit. As the day unfolded, she could hear whispers of excitement, the energy palpable. Spiraling doubts began to tangle with threads of hope and possibility, a thrilling concoction of fear and ambition that hummed in her veins. She stood on the precipice of a profound transformation, a leap into the unknown, armed with her grandmother's recipes and her newfound purpose. The path forward shimmered with promise, but was thick with uncertainty. What if the reality clashed with her dreams? As the determination solidified within her, Emily knew one truth remained. She had stepped into her power. And as the thoughts churned and the day wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone would attempt to bring her down. The next chapter of her journey was waiting, and the stakes were only about to rise higher. What awaited her could shatter or elevate everything she had worked for. Would she be ready to face the trials ahead, and would she emerge stronger or be consumed by them? The answer loomed just beyond the horizon, beckoning her forward into the unknown. Upon returning home, Emily was swept into a whirlwind of thoughts. The adrenaline surged through her, propelling her into brainstorming sessions over her grandmother's recipes.
As she sank into the comforting embrace of her kitchen, the sharp scent of herbs and spices mingled with nostalgia, beckoning strength and creativity. Each ingredient seemed to taunt her with the gravity of her ambition and the legacy she sought to reinterpret. Despite losing herself in preparation, threads of anxiety whispered in the back of her mind. What would the crowd think? Would they truly appreciate the stories behind her dishes? Cooking had always been a beacon for her. It stirred her soul and connected her with her roots. Yet the fear of failure loomed like a shadow, casting doubt over her meticulously constructed hopes. Focus, she reminded herself. This was no longer about merely serving food. It was a narrative, a fusion of identity and heritage. Minutes turned into hours, and she immersed herself in creating her vision. Each stir of the pot and placement of ingredients became a deliberate part of her burgeoning story. When she was finally ready to present her dish to trusted friends, she felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. They arrived one evening, eager yet unfamiliar with the revelations that awaited them. Emily stood before them, her heart pounding, as she unveiled a plate steeped in history, her grandmother's stuffed peppers, imbued with echoes of laughter from family gatherings. As they savored the first bites, she watched intently, gauging their responses. She witnessed the expressions on their faces transform from curiosity to wonder, tension lifting as memory washed over them. Next came the crunch of well-cooked peppers, suffusing their taste with warmth and depth, each mouthful unfurling stories embedded in the recipe. Emily's heart swelled. This was no ordinary dish. It shone as a beacon of love, memories, and heritage. However, just when the atmosphere seemed positively charged with enthusiasm, a shadow crossed the room. Rebecca, the embodiment of doubt and competition. She had come uninvited, yet the moment her presence disrupted the gathering, Emily's stomach tightened. "What's this?" Rebecca queried. A sardonic smile plastered across her face as she moved to inspect Emily's handiwork, her posture tense and critical. Using someone else's recipe? That's risky. Emily's initial reaction was hurt, but it quickly morphed into resolve. This was her grandmother's recipe, a foundation of her self-expression, and she owed it to herself and her heritage to defend it. "It's more than just a recipe to me. It's a story," she exclaimed, her voice steady as she confronted the challenge of Rebecca's dismissive tone. Rebecca raised an eyebrow, but remained silent, intrigued despite her skepticism. As Emily recounted the memories encapsulated in every flavor, she began to feel the energy shift. Even her friends seemed to lean into her narrative, pulled by the threads connecting her past to the present.
It was a moment of revelation for Emily. She had not just conquered doubt, she had discovered a newfound bravery in her conviction. This was where her journey had led her, not just to create, but to defend her truth. As they enjoyed the remaining servings, laughter erupted sporadically, the air thick with warmth and camaraderie. But Emily couldn't shake Rebecca's presence, now a looming figure amid her triumph. What was she plotting? Would she challenge Emily again? The seeds of competition were sown, and their ramifications were yet to unfold. In the days that followed, Emily felt premonitions of changes she couldn't quite grasp. She needed to be on guard, to prepare for whatever revelations and confrontations lay ahead as she built her dream. Each day felt like a countdown to the inevitable clash with Rebecca. Emboldened by her recent experience, Emily began to refine her dishes and hone her storytelling even further. But lurking questions surfaced. Was it enough? How would she contend not just with Rebecca's presence, but with her own fears of inadequacy? The balance shifted, and tension coiled tighter around Emily's ambitions and self-confidence. Knowing that the coming days would demand more from her than ever before, she readied herself for battle, not just in the kitchen, but in the realm of self-acceptance and validation. The moment felt pivotal, oscillating between preparation and inevitability. Could she sustain the momentum of her aspirations? An unsettling realization crept in. Her greatest enemy wasn't Rebecca, but the self-doubt echoed by her. The road ahead was uncertain, but one pressing question loomed. Would she summon the strength to not only withstand the turbulence, but also inscribe her identity in the culinary world? The hours blurred into a haze of flour-dusted surfaces and simmering pots as Emily immersed herself in the kitchen. That previous gathering lingered in her mind, a vivid tapestry woven with laughter, doubt, and the fire of new conviction. Each stir renewed her sense of purpose. Every chopped herb cut through the discord of self-doubt that had often held her captive. But doubt was a resilient adversary, and it would not yield easily. As stories of her grandmother danced around in her mind, they intertwined with the haunting echoes of Rebecca's mocking voice. Emily envisioned herself standing tall against the wave of competition. She imagined the plates she would create, the narrative they would tell, the twist of history that would lend her dishes an air of authenticity. Yet every time she envisioned success, an intrusive thought pierced through. What if Rebecca's skepticism sunk in deeper? What if her culinary heritage, once a source of pride, became fodder for derision? The harsh rhetoric echoed, gnawing at her spirit, forcing her to confront the festering anxieties that simmered just beneath the surface. To shake the uncertainty, Emily needed to explore uncharted territories in her culinary prowess.
She set out to blend new flavors with her grandmother's cherished recipes. How could she enhance tradition without sacrificing authenticity? Emily focused on innovative twists, perhaps a spicy glaze to elevate those stuffed peppers, or a side dish that harmonized old-world roots with modern culinary science. This was not just cooking, it was personal development. Each day she retreated into the cocoon of her kitchen, documenting her experiments meticulously. She wrote notes on which elements enhanced flavor profiles, examining each outcome with the ruthless objectivity of a scientist. Guided by her heritage, yet driven by an insatiable hunger to push boundaries, she transformed her artistry into a form of personal declaration. Every culinary choice became a testament to her growth, every plate a narrative of self-discovery. Nevertheless, impending conflict with Rebecca simmered in the background, a shadow stirring the pot of her emotions. Emily found herself rehearsing varying scenarios in her mind, how Rebecca might criticize her concoctions or belittle her creative choices. Such thoughts weighed down her resolve, even as her dishes burgeoned with new life. Would the shift in flavor combinations translate well? Could she stand against Rebecca's verbal barbs or the scathing reviews that might follow? Seeking solidarity, Emily reached out to fellow chefs online and in her community. The digital sphere offered a surprisingly warm sanctuary, filled with shared experiences that echoed her own vulnerabilities. Engaging with others' stories, those who had faced down their critics, fed a growing fire within her. This newfound camaraderie lent credibility to her journey. It was a reminder that culinary expression transcended individual apprehensions and rooted itself in shared human experiences. But growth came at a price. As Emily crafted her vision, the pressure to impress mounted. Her confidence wavered as each potential new dish felt like a gamble, each plate a critical pivot where triumph or failure could loom. She questioned whether her quest to innovate would be misunderstood. What if this mission to redefine her ancestral recipes alienated her loyal patrons? Amidst these swirling thoughts, she gathered her closest friends for a tasting, a stable of camaraderie that had always fortified her spirit. But this time tensions lurked beneath the surface. Would they recognize her growth? Would they understand her ambition? Or would it only invite the judgments she feared? As attuned as she was to their past responses, she found herself caught in the precarious tension of uncertainty. The balance between asserting her identity through her dishes and fearing rejection was fragile at best. Somewhere within that bubbling batter, Emily fought the nagging fear that emerged when she dared to be more than just a caretaker of her grandmother's legacy.
Was she prepared for the inevitable confrontation of expectations, both from others and within?
The time had come to face not just Rebecca, but the reflection of her bravest culinary self. But just as she felt she was gaining clarity and momentum, a sudden message pinged on her phone, shattering her focus. "I can't wait to see what you're cooking up. Be ready. I'm coming for you." It was Rebecca, and amidst her defiance, could she finally transform anxious energy into a powerful challenge? The message hung in the air, unsettling and electrifying. Emily stared at her phone, the screen illuminating her conflicted expression. It was a gauntlet thrown down, a challenge wrapped tightly in the guise of harmless excitement. Yet deep down, she understood it was much more, an impending confrontation with the very person who personified her doubts. Channeling the unease surging within her, Emily took a deep breath and stepped toward her workstation. Her kitchen became a sanctuary where she could recraft her narrative and turn the tide against the whispering skepticism. The time for experimentation had cemented into a deadline, a need to assert herself through her creations. With every knife chop and flavor integration, she envisioned her dishes emerging not just as food, but as bold declarations of her evolution. She decided to focus on the dish that had always held a special place in her heart, her grandmother's signature roast. But this time it would transform grandly. Emily envisioned it infused with exotic spices, cumin and coriander to complement her grandmother's traditional herbs, rejuvenating a recipe steeped in nostalgia. As she mused over the ingredients, a realization dawned. This was not merely about the food, it was about her food and what it signifies, the bridging of history and innovation. As hours turned into a flurry of activity, Emily embraced the chaos. The kitchen became an orchestra, each sound a sizzle, a chop, a mix, aligning with the rhythm of her resolve. Notes from online mentors echoed in her mind, reminding her that every successful dish was crafted from both tradition and courage. This was her moment to shine, her opportunity to merge stories into seasoning. Yet deep in her thoughts lurked the pressing worry of what would come next. How would her friends react? Would they taste the passion and determination infused in every bite? She envisioned their expressions as she coaxed the aromas into the air. Would they offer praise or whisper doubts? Each question turned her excitement into tension, tightening like a noose around her creative warmth. To hold control over her worries, Emily shifted focus. She established a vibrant table setting, a visual enticement to accompany the culinary masterpiece she aspired to present. A touch of elegance, fresh herbs adorning the plates, handmade bread deliberately placed as an homage to her lineage, a nod towards the care her grandmother had once exhibited. This gathering was as much about hospitality as it was about innovative cuisine. Both were her birthrights. The tasting day approached, and the anticipation in her looped thoughts turned into a cacophony. Each friend's comment from the past resurfaced. Pride, criticism, uncertainty. Did they truly appreciate her journey, or were they simply accommodating her attempts? As she gathered the final preparations, Emily wrestled with the echo of Rebecca's confidence, the very person whose beliefs served as both her nemesis and her muse. Then came the moment she had both anticipated and dreaded. Her friends arrived, full of chatter and laughter. They entered her kitchen, igniting the warmth she had designed to elicit. Emily felt the weight of scrutiny in their casual smiles. Tension hung heavily, yet an unexpected determination surged through her. When she plated the Wisted creation, each layer of story shared between generations, she dared herself to step into her truth. This was not just food, this was her declaration of independence. As her friends gathered around the table, their laughter resonated within her walls, yet the moment of revelation teetered on the edge. Would their joyful expressions dissolve into bewilderment once they tasted her attempt to redefine tradition? The air hung thick with the taste of uncertainty mingling with hope. Against the backdrop of shared stories and smiles, the culminating moment arrived. Emily lifted her fork, sat amongst friends, and prepared for the pendulum's swing. Would she leap forward into acceptance or recoil into doubt? But before a single bite could be taken, another message dinged on her phone, this time from Rebecca. "You think you can win with a gimmick? Can't wait to see if your heritage will hold up." A challenge lay just outside the door, and Emily had to decide. Was she ready to embrace her identity boldly against an approaching storm? The silence that followed Rebecca's message weighed heavily in the air, drifting like fog through Emily's thoughts. As laughter and chatter continued around the dinner table, she felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with anxiety coursing through her veins. The friends she had waited months to impress now seemed like critical judges, a jury she did not know if she would convince. She forced a smile, offering her friends a taste of her creation. The plate was vibrant, smoky hues of roasted vegetables framed by the rich brown of the roast. This dish was layered not just with spices but with her aspirations, her identity woven in every flavor. "All right, friends," she announced, her voice steadier than she felt. "This is my twist on my grandmother's roast, infused with spices inspired by my travels.
The words were intended to evoke curiosity, but Emily saw the slightest flicker of skepticism dance in Rebecca's eye as she prepared to take her first bite. The moment of truth approached, an excruciating countdown. Emily could only watch as forks plunged into the culinary creation. Each bite would either salute her effort or reinforce her doubts.
Would they explore the depth of her intentions, or would they dismiss it as just another attempt to elevate the mundane? As they savored the flavors, she held her breath, waiting for the rising tide of opinions. A nervous laugh escaped her. You know, this roast is my way of connecting the past with the present. It's more than just cooking. It's about who I've become. Samantha, one of her closest friends, nodded, her mouth full. This is incredible. Seriously, it's like you've taken us on a flavor journey. Emily's heart ignited at those words. One voice of appreciation felt monumental, lighting a small flame in her otherwise anxious mind. She shifted in her seat, momentarily reveling in the victory, but quickly looked to Rebecca, her anticipation strain returning. Next came Nathan, who swallowed, his face a mix of surprise and enlightenment. There's a brightness to it. That's unexpected. He paused to glance around the table, perhaps gauging reactions. Yet amidst their enthusiasm, Emily caught Rebecca's narrowed gaze, assessing and critical. "What do you think?" Emily asked, unable to mask the urgency in her tone. It was almost desperate. She craved validation from the very person whose opinion held the most weight. Rebecca's eyes met hers, calculated and cold. "It's interesting." The word floated between them, lingering like a challenge or a dismissal. "But can you really be proud of something so constructed?" The tension flickered palpable, and Emily felt the adrenaline surge again, morphing into a fierce determination. This was no longer merely dinner. This was her fight against doubt, the understanding that she was not dimming her identity under layers of someone else's expectations. "Constructed or crafted," Emily countered, her voice steadying as she realized she could confront this. "Isn't life all about evolution? I wanted to bring my heritage forward, not just keep it in a box." The table stilled, yet the challenge loomed. How far was she willing to stand her ground against Rebecca? Doubts from her past felt like chains breaking. The more she spoke, the lighter she became. The others exchanged glances, caught in this unexpected pivot in the evening. Emily's heart raced. She was stepping into an open arena, revealing her inner strength while blazing a trail for her truth. Rebecca leaned back, lips pursed, and Emily braced herself for the tension hanging in the air. She had exposed her vulnerability, her culinary craft becoming a mirror reflecting both her ambitions and the shadows of her fears. Would Rebecca respond with reinforcement or condemnation? And more critically, what would it mean for Emily's journey going forward? As she prepared for the next volley of words, one thing felt certain. This confrontation had awakened a deeper resolve within her. Where would this newfound courage lead? Would it forge connections or drive a wedge among friends? The moment was far from resolved. The atmosphere teetered on the edge of clarity or chaos, beckoning for a conclusion like a drawn-out bowstring, ready to snap. Emily felt the weight of everyone's eyes as she locked gazes with Rebecca. The air grew thick, punctuated only by the sounds of forks clinging against plates and the soft murmurs of her friends pondering the dish. It was as if each moment stretched out an eternity, her determination grappling desperately against her vulnerability. The moment crystallized into a fierce confrontation of wills. Constructed or crafted, she repeated in her mind, testing her resolve. Beneath the echoes of dinner conversations was an undercurrent of affirmation she hadn't expected. Perhaps the mere act of standing up to Rebecca itself could be its own form of evolution. "Why does everything have to fit into neat little boxes?" she pressed, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. "This is me, blending who I was and who I strive to be. If I don't challenge myself, how can I grow?" Rebecca raised an eyebrow, her features unreadable, yet Emily saw a hint of acknowledgement in the dark depths of her friend's eyes. Despite the tension, Emily forged ahead, risking more exposure than she knew she was capable of. "Every ingredient in this dish has a story. My grandmother's kitchen, my journeys abroad. This plate is my identity, and I won't shy away from it just because you think it's too constructed." The strength of her conviction mixed with an underlying thread of fear propelling her forward. "Identity is built," she continued, now wrapping the table into her conviction. "It's woven over time from experiences and challenges. This is not just food. It's the result of years of discovering and honoring my roots."
To her surprise, Nathan leaned in, intrigue sparkled in his eyes. You know, I never thought about it that way. Cooking can be so personal. Your dish tells a story. Emily's heart raced. A desire for acceptance coursed through her, mingled with the recognition that this moment was bigger than just approval. It was about asserting her right to exist authentically, regardless of what others may think. Rebecca's expression softened slightly, and Emily caught a glimpse of understanding flicker behind the skepticism. There's a point there, Rebecca admitted, her voice quieter than usual. But how do you know that you're not just trying too hard? Arms crossed, Emily sensed the challenge remained, but felt lighter, purposeful. Did she sense the slightest shift? She had fought off the shackles of conformity and was ready to embrace the melee of opinions. Maybe trying isn't the problem. Maybe it's how passionate we are that matters. Shouldn't we try to push beyond what is expected? The response was electric. Samantha broke the silence, excitedly interjecting. I think that's exactly what we should be doing. We don't evolve by playing it safe.
For the first time, laughter bubbled through the table, a collective recognition settling. In that moment, the room transformed from an interrogation to a forum for dialogue. Emily absorbed the renewed energy, the thrill of expressing herself steadily obliterating the remnants of doubt. Yet, even amid this emerging camaraderie, a seed of anxiety remained buried in the depth of her stomach. Would they ever truly understand the essence of what she was attempting to express? Or would the walls she had feared, the walls of judgment, ever truly crumble? As Rebecca shifted in her seat, that familiar critical edge returning in her gaze, Emily felt her heart quicken once more. The conversation was shifting, yet the implications of Rebecca's scrutiny lingered like an unfinished symphony, demanding resolution. What challenges lay ahead? With the spotlight on her, new questions bloomed like wildflowers. The exploration of her identity unearthed further insecurities, and she knew the discussion would not end cleanly. Somewhere deep within, she questioned if she was truly ready for the potential ramifications. As laughter ebbed, Rebecca leaned forward, poised to speak again, a familiar smirk painting her lips. Emily braced herself, anticipation crackling in the air like static, knowing she was once again on the precipice of confrontation. Would she defend the integrity of her craft, or would doubt throw her off balance? A surge of courage blended with uncertainty as the next words left Rebecca's mouth. Emily felt an explosive tension hanging in the air, a palpable mix of apprehension and exhilaration coursing through her veins. The laughter had dissipated, replaced by the heavy sense of anticipation brewing within her kitchen. Rebecca leaned forward, a hint of a smirk still lingering on her lips. "So you think mixing flavors and cultures is enough to impress?" she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. Yet something fundamental had shifted in Emily. No longer was she just a woman with hopes. She was an artist fusing the past with the present, actively shaping her narrative. "It's not just about impressing, Rebecca. It's about evolution." The words escaped her mouth with an unexpected steadiness. If we don't challenge ourselves, how can we truly grow? The room held its breath, and Emily took a moment to gather her thoughts. She was no longer merely reacting to Rebecca's veiled challenges. She was asserting herself as a creator. Her past frustrations with doubt transformed into an unwavering desire for validation, not just from her friends, but primarily from within herself. "I'm proud of where I come from, and I believe there's strength in blending those traditions with innovation. This dish tells a story, my story." Rebecca's expression faltered for a moment, and Emily seized the opportunity to drive her point home. "It's about connection, not just to my heritage, but to the people who will eat this food."
Cooking is a living narrative, one that deserves to thrive in today's world. To disregard that is to stifle growth. A silence enveloped the group, allowing Emily to gather her strength. This was her moment, her narrative. It was not enough to simply cook. She needed to express the soul behind her dishes. As nerves melted into purpose, she felt empowered, the steam rising from her roast mingling with the fire inside her spirit. At last, Rebecca looked around the table. "All right, we'll see. The flavors must work cohesively, or this whole endeavor will be for naught." The challenge in her statement lingered, but the disdain had softened. As her friends took another bite, exhilaration washed over Emily. Samantha grinned wide, and Nathan nodded with eager agreement. "There's a real depth here. It feels substantial," he remarked, his enthusiasm infectious. Emboldened, Emily turned her focus back to Rebecca. "It's about more than just tastes. It's about understanding and honoring our past while reaching for the future. If you don't taste the love behind the dish,
Perhaps I'm not the one who needs to rethink their approach. With every word spoken, Emily stepped closer to an undeniable truth. She had transformed not just through cooking, but through her willingness to embrace her vulnerability in front of others. It was more than food. It was identity, art, and community among friends. "Okay, I can appreciate that," Rebecca conceded, her voice softer, less confrontational. The acknowledgement felt like a critical step for Emily, not just in the conversation, but as a testimony to her growth. As the night wore on, more understanding emerged around the table, filled not only with great food, but also a resonance of shared experiences. Emily felt a warmth radiating among them, a collective embrace of stories that intertwined exponentially. Yet beneath that warmth, an undercurrent of doubt still lingered in the background. Could she maintain this momentum? The true test awaited her beyond the night, the real world, with all its scrutiny and judgment. Would she be able to navigate through Rebecca's voice in her head and the unwelcoming echoes from their community? As she cleared the table, a sense of dawning confidence began to creep in. Emily had taken a decisive step, not just in her cooking, but in her life. She felt anchored, no longer an insignificant character in her own story, but the leading figure, steering herself towards uncharted waters. The evening culminated with laughter, warmth, and spirited dialogue about the flavors that danced on their tongues. Emily had tackled her insecurities head-on, transforming doubt into dialogue. It was a testament to her evolution, encased in every dish she prepared, every story she shared. And as her friends departed with smiles, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, relishing in the celebratory atmosphere, a tribute to her newfound ambition.
The culinary world that once intimidated her now thrummed with possibilities. She knew challenges lurked around the corner. The pop-up event and its associated expectations would demand both her culinary proficiency and self-possession. Would she rise to the occasion, fortifying her journey with her grandmother's legacy while carving her path? This was only a moment, an echo of an ongoing metamorphosis. Emily felt ready to embrace it all, for she had lovingly crafted more than a meal that evening. It was an unyielding proclamation of who she was becoming. With renewed conviction, she whispered aloud to the empty room, "I will not be silenced. I will embrace my journey." The silent kitchen, once a vessel of isolation and doubt, now bore witness to a woman ready to conquer all that lay ahead. As the soft light faded, her heart surged with determination. Emily turned to her grandmother's old recipe book, brimming with potential and promise, crafted with love, just like her newfound identity. She was eager to share not only the flavors of her dishes, but the courage to pursue her dreams, this time standing tall. To all those who had doubted, those who had pushed her down, she'd prove them wrong, one bite at a time. This was her journey, her legacy, and she was just getting started. You need to subscribe now to witness Emily's journey unfold in ways you never expected. This is the moment to show your support by clicking that subscribe button. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm and keep these stories alive. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how one woman's journey can inspire us all. Comment below your reactions and theories about Emily's incredible transformation. Let's build the community she always dreamed of.